Okay. Hi, everybody. Good evening, everybody. So you know me. I have to get sort of a holy atmosphere going. So I always honestly picture us and our souls hovering together in a field of grace, which is so powerful. And I love the prayer of Teresa, hover over us, God. Grant us the grace to receive the blessings. Open me up. Let the truth of whatever will be given to us pour into me. Hover over me, God. Amen. Okay. I love opening workshops. This is almost my favorite part because it focuses me as much as it focuses you. And if I sound like I'm yelling at you, I am. And the reason is because I'm not hooked up to the mic yet, but I will be tomorrow. So pardon the yelling, because I really am. But I would like to start this evening. The subject, as you know, is I took the metaphor of the garden of life. But I want to come into it through a different angle. And the way that I work is every time I sit with an idea talks to me. And the good news about that is that the idea talks to me. And the not so good news is that the idea talks to me and off I go. And when I was a younger person, I had more control over those things. And now I think it's because I enjoy the magic carpet ride that I no longer discipline my intellect in the way that I used to. And it's either that or my soul takes flight. And so I need and I want to follow my notes with a little more rigor this evening than I normally do. I want to I'm not sure that's going to work, but I like what I wrote. So I'm determined to follow my notes. But I would like to say that, we're at this time that I think of as souls in flight. And that's that for the last many, many decades now, 6 decades, we really have been, we could characterize who we are in one way, in that we are in search of God. And we haven't found that place, and that is something we have in common. There is a search going on within us, around us, and that characterizes the world more than we realize, and that is the endless quest. Contained within this quest is that there has been a dismantling of the familiar, a dismantling of the language of religion, an exodus of religion, a dismantling of so much that is, and the dismantling of the vocabulary of religion, which is something that, we're going to just take a look at, but not this evening, except for me to say at this point that the use of words, I hope, is something that I'll make very significant for you as we go through the next couple of days. And that in the dismantling of the vocabulary of the sacred, which is what has taken place over the last 6 decades, that the society has blocked access to the sacred and not realized it. So if I were to take the word blue out of your vocabulary, could you see blue? Okay. I would block access to all that is blue, including the sky, including the ocean. So if I took the vocabulary of the sacred out of you, including critical words, conscience, and replaced it with a useless word, consciousness. If I did clever tricks of the trade and removed the words that are incredibly significant, words like soul, or words like even the meaning of the sacraments in all religions, not just Christianity, but in all, sacred rituals, spiritual accountability, and remove these without replacing them with anything. I didn't replace them. I didn't replace them with a more modern version. I simply took them away. The gap in us has remained ferocious. We haven't replaced it. We haven't replaced it. Instead, what happened was we took flight in the idea that we create our own reality. That's how we replaced it. We replaced it with the idea that we create our own reality, and that finding the self is a replacement for finding the sacred. And that's what we done did. Okay? We left behind many of the rules of the church, and the significance of traditional religion, of all religions. So when I say traditional religion, I'm not just going to Christianity, I'm going to traditional religions. And traditional Buddhism, traditional anything of tradition, is that it served as guardians of social and moral conscience, however it stood within its culture. It was can I take this off without it pulling things apart for me? Okay. It stood as, the guardians of moral conscience and moral, and a type of, it ordered the tribal mind. Now, what's significant about this is that's the lower part of all of us, the tribal mind. It is the ground beneath our feet. And you'll notice as we move, this is where the garden is. So I'm going to take us into the metaphor of the garden. But I'm going to draw it also with the fact that we are living in the greatest environmental, ecological crisis of our time. And I would ask you to connect the dot, that these are connected. That the uprooting of all tribal traditions down to their roots are directly connected energetically to the uprooting of every tradition down to its roots. And I would ask you to understand as we go through this that it's not about, believe me, the religious traditions and the teachings of, I want you to believe in the teachings of the Old Testament and the New Testament literally. Because if you know me, as you're going to come to know my teachings, I don't go there. I am speaking symbolically and energetically and archetypally of what it means to be rooted. If I could merge the significance of holy literature with the chakras, as I did in Anatomy of the Spirit, as I did with your understanding that we were structured long before these sacred places called churches and synagogues and temples were. The body was formed on the system of chakras and the human energy system. And our system was formed as a map of the laws of creation. It was formed as a map that works in exactly the way all the maps of nature do. And that what follows in terms of social structure comes millennia after, millions of years after the maps of creation were formed. We come out of the soil of creation. Those came just a few hundred years ago. So what I'm talking about is an imprint in our biology that is millions of years. Not just a couple of hundred, just 2,000 years ago, it's Christianity, and 2,500 years ago with Buddha. That's nothing. That's nothing. That's yesterday. That's noon on the clock. It's nothing. I mean, half the world doesn't even have indoor plumbing. It's nothing. So to understand that the role of religion was to take the understanding of power and somehow put it in a tribal system that could be understood because they could feel, they knew that the organization of the human being and the organization of the whole were one and the same somehow, and they required somehow type of governance that was ordered in the same way. When we left those traditions and we didn't replace it with anything, we began a quest that we're still on, that somehow we are, I think it's been my experience now, that the speed at which our world has changed, the speed at which our world has shifted, is not something that we have calculated into the search for God. That somehow or other, the way in which the world is spinning around us is somehow not in our lens as being part of the pressures that are within us, and is not part of the calculations that need to be worked in us, because we do not stretch our energy field to include the pressures in the collective in the way we should. Said differently, our energy system is the size of the collective, but we do not calculate. We don't do our calculations correctly. When we think about the size of ourselves, we still define ourselves by the size of our physical body. We still do not get that we have an energy system and that energy system is a conscious system. We haven't adjusted to, just like we haven't adjusted to a new model of God, we haven't adjusted to a new model of our biology. We're in between worlds. We haven't made that leap between what I see and the world that is. So we're living in a world, the world we see is a world that is no more. The world we don't see is the authentic one. Does that sound confusing to you? Okay. The world that we see is a world that you access through 5 senses. But you don't have 5 senses. You have about 30. You have emotional sense. You have intuition, right? Yes? Okay. But show me your intuitive sense. Show it to me. Put it in a box and bring it here. Show me your emotional sense. Now, what would you trust more? Something your emotion told you about me, or something you looked at? So your emotion, you would trust your emotion more. So you would trust something you can't see more than what you could see. That's my point. My point is that the world we cannot see, the world we cannot hear, the world we cannot taste, has now become more authentic to us than the world we can see, we can hear, the world that we access through the internet. Where's the internet? Where is it? Bring me the internet. Bring me the size of an email. Show me an email going from here to there. Show it to me. I don't want to see it in paper. Show me an email traveling. Can you do it? Show me. Bring it in a box. You can't do it. And yet you believe there's something up there called Mr. iCloud that you trust more than anyone you have on earth here that has all your data. Am I wrong? Where's Mr. iCloud? You ever met him? Have you met him? Ever had dinner with Mr. iCloud? But you have trusted Mr. iCloud with every piece of secret information you have. Am I wrong? No. Does he know more about you than your mother, your dad, your husband, your best friend? Yes. He has all your data? Yes. Could Mr. iCloud bankrupt you, blackmail you, absolutely set you up for a fall, wipe you out, and you've never even met him? Never even met Mr. iCloud. Your whole world is controlled by a world you will never see. That is my point. We have evolved into an invisible land, a totally invisible land, and you are not even aware of it. You've got an address in an invisible world, and you are not even aware that you've moved. And you live in a physical world that you are not even aware is a false address. It's a totally fake address. There's nothing in the physical world that you trust. You certainly don't trust people. You don't trust anyone you do business with because you show up with 18 lawyers. You don't trust anything. You don't trust your bankers. You don't trust your priests. You don't trust anything when it comes down to it. Nothing. And nothing you see you trust. So how in the world can you go the next step and trust something you can't see, like a spiritual path? It's been my experience that what we've done is we've turned the spiritual path into finding with absolute conviction what we do not believe, and having no sense with absolute conviction what we do believe. What people can tell me is that they know for certain that they don't believe this, they don't believe this, they don't believe this, and they don't believe that. But they cannot say with absolute conviction, I have faith in this. I have faith in that, with absolute conviction. But they know what they don't believe. Now, there are rare pockets, and you know, I have looked and watched and studied and wondered for so long about, for example, miracles and healing. Because I know that healing at a different, quote, rate of speed, healing illnesses that in the ordinary five-sensory world, physicians would say that's not possible to heal that. healing in illnesses, such as blindness in the 5 sensory world, broken backs in the 5 sensory world. Healing only using your 5 senses. These illnesses, what I would call first column illnesses, would not be possible. You don't have enough energetic resources, but you also don't have enough inner resources, to the kind we're going to talk about. But what kind? And I'll give you just that example. Someone who experiences a healing that is faster than ordinary time. So imagine your arm like this is instantaneous, high noon. Light goes into matter, just like that. There's no time. This is ordinary time, hour by hour by hour. So this is ordinary time, this is timelessness. And what is actually happening to us is we're doing this shift now. And we're moving from ordinary time that we all shared, where we had this sense that we all work hard and we save for 30 years. And we all understood that. And we retired at this age and we did this. And we all shared the same equations. We had a coming out party at age 16. We got married about age 22 to 24. We had our first baby about 26. There was a time that we shared after the nuclear age. Nuclear power, nuclear bombs changed our equation. And it changed the speed and power at which destruction could happen. So now the proportions were changed. And it's important to understand that it went from this many people being killed in this amount of time to instantaneous. Now that equation, time and space, shifted because we went into the world of quantum time, timelessness. Quantum physics. Are you following me here? So now we're dealing in the world of quantum with our own capacity to reach our own quantum technology in the world behind our eye. In the world behind we're spiritual. The spiritual journey is about reaching our own quantum technology, quantum spirituality behind our eye. Instant healing is intention into form without time. Let me say it again. That ordinary medicine has to work within the timing of the body. Take this medicine for 6 weeks, which means you'll be sick for 6 weeks. This medicine takes 6 weeks. Okay? Now, what energy medicine said was that with the use of consciousness, we can shift the speed because we'll increase consciousness and that will decrease time. With me? So the more conscious you become, the needle moves up and the less authority time has over what's happening to you. Are you with me? Which means that the meter becomes in your head versus out here. Because I don't know what every one of us becomes responsible then for our own meter. Our own meter. We're all on our own now. Because, and this is why, for example, when I do a reading and I see someone attached to their past, an attachment to history is an attachment to a meter that's going to cost you years of time. It's going to cost you years of cell tissue. And in terms of medicine, I'm going to say this is going to cost you at least another week you can't, I'm going to have to lower your meter. You're going to need a lot of chemical resources because you've got so much history. Am I making sense here? Okay, so that's how it works. Now, which means that ultimately, every person can theoretically get to that place of kairos, timing, where they have enough energy in them that could outrun the speed of an illness. That if you have enough timelessness, you could outrun the progression of a time disorder like cancer. When someone says this pancreatic cancer, it can wipe you, you've got 6 weeks here, baby. But if you could reach enough timelessness, you could blow that right out of the water. Absolutely. This is not theory for me. This is the way the spirit versus matter works. Now, that said, here comes factor number 3, which is, in my opinion, is the biggest one, which is, could you handle that experience actually happening to you? Because in truth, and this is where we're going to dwell for the weekend, is the strength of your spirit and what's actually in your spirit. What is it comprised of? And how to make your spirit of such substance. And that's that. I believe deeply that one of the main reasons, I should say, that such profound healings are denied people is not because your faith isn't wonderful and you're not a good enough person or we're not good enough people. It's because you're not strong enough to experience something out of the normal speed and sustain the feedback from people who tell you such a thing is not possible. I think that if you are still so connected to the tribal mind, where your whole sense of validation comes from saying, you have to believe me, but you have to, because you want them to sustain you. You want them to think you're terrific. You have to believe me. I did this. How come you don't believe me? If you need other people to validate or sustain things that happen to you, then as you transition to the inner world, where personal experiences become more and more a reflection of your personal inner life, they can't be validated by another person. They simply cannot. And if you require that, then the greater act of compassion is to deny you that experience. Because to give it to you is to position you for madness. For such suffering as you have never known is to give you something so beautiful, and then to have you forget that experience and turn you into someone quite ugly because others will not believe you. Do you see? So the actual journey here is one of what can you sustain on your own? What is it you actually believe? What do you think the spiritual journey is one of moving into what is my garden? What seeds am I planting? What do I refine? What I believe is happening now, and I deeply believe, is that this movement away from traditional religions is something that was supposed to happen. It's not the fault of churches and bad priests and bad nuns and bad rabbis and bad this or bad. That's nonsense. We were supposed to move on. The mythologies of religions were meant to collapse because they can't sustain us. But that's just part of it. That's just part of where things have come to a necessary end. Another is that we have we've morphed to become something very dangerous. And that's that we have fallen out of harmony with our essential nature. With our essential nature itself. We have fallen completely out of harmony. We've taken a detour with our essential nature years ago, centuries ago, in the beginning of the age of reason. When we had Descartes and Galileo, when they discovered, all of these scientists discovered the age of reason, discovered the capacity of reason, discovered different aspects about the beginning of science, real science. And they fell in love with the capacity to reason. And what happened at that time was that they created the God of reason. And because we could reason, we became half man and half God. We became half man and half God. We made ourselves spiritually special in terms of all the other creatures on the earth. We became the most special because we could reason. And then we decided that anything else that couldn't reason was not worth anything. And that gave us permission to be abusive to everything. To people that we decided couldn't reason, who weren't like us, who didn't believe like us, to animals, to nature, to absolutely everything, to anything and everything that did not reason like us. It gave us permission to abuse it, to kill it, to use it, to imprison it, to enslave it, to do whatever we wanted. We still feel that way. This is still the reasoning system we use to make our laws, to rationalize what we do, and it comes all the way from Galileo, Copernicus, Newton, and our belief that we are reasonable creatures. This is how we see ourselves. Right here. And this is what we have never, the truth is, we have never been more unreasonable in our lives. We've never been more irrational, unreasonable. We've never been more foolish. But because we see ourselves as just the opposite, we can't see ourselves for what we're doing. We simply can't see it. We simply won't see it, okay? When in fact, wait a minute, there are things I wanted to go through here that are important. Because I can't expect to remember all this in my little cabeza. Yes, that would be reasonable. Here we go. What this allowed us to do over the course of centuries was that as we became enamored with science, with Newton and just all of them, East and West, but mostly the West, is that we formed a relationship with nature, with knowledge itself. Because remember that we have a relationship with knowledge itself by saying this knowledge is valuable, this knowledge is not. The study of earth knowledge, the study, for example, of knowledge that is about our relationship to our own nature, we decided was not important. We decided that. When in fact, the study of the systems that tell us about our own nature, such as astrology, should have been incorporated into every child's education. Because it's not fortune telling. It's the study of the science of the systems of nature as they relate to the elements in the garden of your body. And the 4 elements that our body is managed by: earth and water and fire. Earth, water, fire, and air. Okay, all those 4 elements. This is my latest reflections class. Initiations by these 4 elements. These are the 4 elements that you are comprised of, and you are in fact one and the same with the laws of nature. These are your governing laws. This is the new theology, in my opinion, is understanding the God within nature, what I call organic divinity, which is exactly what this class is about. Okay, this is what is in you. To understand how you are structured, to understand yourself as saying, am I planting a seed here? Do I really want to plant a seed here? Is this situation going to bring me balance or not? Because the laws of balance govern you. Whether or not you get that or not, you're going to get that. Because the Tao is in you. You are the living Tao. You are the living truth that for what you do to one, you are doing to the whole. And whether or not you like it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter to anybody. That's the mathematics of the system. It's divine mathematics. And in my opinion, to save the environment, the theology we have to have is nature's theology, which is the one our body has, which is an organic divinity that says the God in me is in fact biological, it's eco-spirituality, and that the thing that makes us personal with God is prayer, and that somehow in this huge ecological system in which there is no religion for God, but that we are one and the same with the whole of creation, that somehow what makes this universe personal and intimate is prayer. That what we are witnessing is the rise of consciousness in every living creature. That we stand back and say, how is it possible that animals have consciousness? They always have. But we separated ourselves from nature. It is we who separated ourselves and said, they can't be conscious. Why? Because we said so. And now we look and say, look at that dolphin, it loves its little pup. Look at that whale, it loves its little pup. Look at that gorilla, it loves its little baby. You want to take that person, put its head in the toilet. What is the matter with you? Why do you think other creatures would not have emotion? What are you thinking? It's because I'm not ready to change my lifestyle. Therefore, you can't have an emotion. Therefore, you can't have it because I don't want to change. And that's how we've been running the universe. But that's got to stop now. It's got to stop now. And we've done that so long as we live here. When we feel that we are not, what we forgot, what we eclipsed in these last 100 years, as we decided we were not part of nature, is that it gave us permission to be observers of nature. And from that came this. I have to go in the country and get some nature because there's no nature in the city. Really? Are you not standing on the earth in the city, or are you flying? Are there no trees? Why does the earth suddenly stop when you're in the city? How is that possible? I don't get that. I've lived in the country for 10 years. I live in the city, and so far as I'm concerned, nature is everywhere. I've gardened in the city, I've gardened in the suburbs, I've gardened in the country, I've gardened everywhere. I don't get that. I've seen nature everywhere. Nature is everywhere. So I don't get people who have to see the tree to sense nature. To that I would say, snap out of it. Knock it off. You may prefer to look at the forest, but you better develop the senses to sense nature everywhere. Or cut off your air supply in the city, because that too is nature. Oxygen is nature. Air is nature. Water is nature. Wind is nature. When you are observers of nature and not part of it, you get to say that the laws of nature don't apply to you. Cause and effect doesn't apply to you. Gravity doesn't apply to you. Going up and down doesn't apply to you. Sensing doesn't apply to you. Magnetic attraction doesn't apply to you. What you get to say is, the laws don't apply to me, period, because I am not ordinary. I am extraordinary. In fact, I'm extraordinary. So you get to operate by the belief that you were born for something special. And that becomes your creed. I'm not ordinary. I'm something special. In fact, this is why most people hold being ordinary in contempt. God, make me anything, don't make me ordinary. They name their kids, don't you love it? Sunshine, meditation, karma, Apple, North Star. What's your child's name? Doorknob, just Astrolab. But don't call him Jane, right? My children are so special. And then they have the unmitigated gall to send you Christmas cards full of pages of how special their children are. I take them, trash can, trash can. Do not send me that garbage. Okay. Warning you, all of you. And you know what, everybody? Nobody wants pictures of your kids with special on them. I just got to tell you, they don't. They could care less, and they don't think your kids are special. So I speak for everybody. Stop with that junk.